Last year, there were 3.2 million calls made to the CPS about neglected children. Out of the 3.2 million, 2.5 million were declared non-victims. Approximately 686,000 of those calls were labeled as abused or neglected. And an estimated 1,640 children died as a result of CPS being called. Hello, my name is Benna Simmons, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about CPS and whether or not a biological parent should be allowed to see their child after their child is taken from them by CPS. This topic not only strikes me and appeals to me on a policy point of view, but it also appeals to me personally. I have an older cousin who chose the wrong path of life and has allowed drugs to take over his whole life. He had a 3-year-old son who was taken from him by CPS because he was being neglected. One of the neighbors called CPS as a result of the little boy always walking in the streets, always having just a saggy diaper on, not looking like he has been fed properly. And so there was action taken place and the little boy got taken from my cousin. 90 days later, after my cousin completed rehab and a drug test, he was rewarded custody of his child again. After that happened, the child's mom was driving with my little cousin and ran up under a semi at 70 miles an hour, and she did not have him properly buckled in the car seat, and he was ejected out of the front glass and killed almost on impact. I believe that 90 days is not long enough to see if a parent can take responsibility of their child. If the courts would have not had given my cousin custody of his child again, he would have never been in the care of the child's mother, who at the time of the wreck was bending over into the passenger seat to get a prescription bottle filled with pain medicine that was not prescribed to her. If that wouldn't have happened, maybe their child would still be here. Maybe not. Who knows? But I can't help but think that he would still be here if it wasn't for the court re-granting rights back to my cousin only after 90 days. He went to rehab, took a drug test, and had a job doing construction work and handyman work for a guy and was getting paid under the table. So not only does this strike me for policy, it strikes me personally. So I think that policy should be changed. As I was reading, most of the time each case for neglect or any time a child is taken from their parents, it is handled by case, and whichever the court deems fair or unfair is what goes. I don't agree with that, and if I were a state representative, I couldn't help but try to make something change. I think the policy needs to be changed to where if someone calls CPS and the child is taken away from their biological parents and the child is placed into foster care and the child is placed under adoption, I believe that it should be another 5-year waiting period for it to even become qualified and open for the biological parent to see their child. I think 5 years maybe will give time for the biological parent to get a job, to get clean, to get rehab, to get counseling for what they did to their child. I'm all about forgiveness and second chances. Unless they flat out beat the bejeebies out of their child, I don't think that you deserve to ever see that child. But maybe that's just me being unfair and having kind of tunnel vision towards the situation. But overall, I believe that 5 years, steady job, rehab, counseling, being clean off drugs for that whole 5 years it should be, there should be a disclosure that goes to the adoptive parents saying that Mr. Smith, for example, has been clean, has followed the rules for 5 years. They are now allowed to see their child, but I think at that point, the court shouldn't be involved. It should be up to the parent that has been taking care of that child. Even when they didn't have to, they've been taking care of that child for 5 years. I don't believe that the biological parent can go to the court saying, well, I've done all I can do and I've done this and all that. Grant me rights to my child. I don't think that's fair. A judge doesn't know the judge doesn't know the child. The judge doesn't know what kind of situation the child has been in the last 5 years. That it's been in a stable home, getting care, getting everything that a child needs. And then all of a sudden the biological parent comes back in the picture and, oh yeah, they're allowed to see their child and get supervised visitation rights every other weekend. I don't agree with that. And that's why, going back to my personal experience with this, I don't agree that even after 3 or 4 years, that my cousin should have been allowed to see his child unsupervised, and then what happened happened. I don't think that gives someone enough time. Now, if you fix your life for the better, that's great. That's really good. But you also have to not be selfish. You did this to your child. You abused your child. You locked them in their bedroom for weeks on end and only gave them water and candy to eat. You didn't ever let them go outside. Anytime they were being a kid and being annoying, you beat the snot out of them. That's not fair. It's not fair for 90 days up to 3 or 4 years later that you say, well, it's still my child. I have a right to see my child. Yeah, but let's not be selfish here. You abused your child. Your child now has emotional trauma because it went through the foster care system and now is happy. But if they're old enough to remember what all you did to them, there's going to be emotional trauma. So then, going further into this, what happens 5 years later? The checklist has been cleaned, and it is presented to the foster parents. What do? Do you say, little Johnny is 6 years old now? The abuse happened when he was 1. He's 6 years old. He knows that we are not his biological parents, but he doesn't recall and remember how he ended up in our care. He doesn't know that his mom or his dad or both abused him. How do you present that? Do you just say, little Johnny, your mom and dad went down the wrong path, but they are better now and they want to see you? Do you want to see them? Or do you wait for little Johnny to develop even more? Well, the problem with little Johnny developing even more and you telling him about his father or his mother or both later on in life is you risk it kind of coming back on you tenfold. If you wait till he or she is through with adolescence and they are a teenager, they are 16, 17 years old, and you tell him or her, you had a mom and dad, they went down the wrong path, they have been clean and sober and have gone through counseling since you were 6. Do you want to see them? Do you want to know them? Then you risk it coming back on yourself and them saying, why am I just now finding out about them? Why didn't you tell me whenever it came back whenever I was 6 years old? There's no right or wrong way to go about this. But that is not what my persuasion is about. That is a completely different topic. My persuasion is for a state-by-state situation, for the state of Texas, but truly I believe this for every other state as well. But for each state, we need something to be changed. We need it to where people like my cousin cannot get custody of their child 90 days later after he had them taken away. There needs to be something changed to where they don't go back into the abusive situation they were in before they're even ready to. That's why I think it's best for there to be 5 years, then ultimately, though, it goes to the adoptive parents. I think that will ultimately lower the rates of CPS. I think that will lower the calls. I think, not the calls, but I think it'll lower the 1,640 kids who have died. I think that will lower the 686,000 who are labeled abused or neglected. No one deserves to be abused. And by each state slowly updating their policies, I believe that every child can have a happier, healthier, more emotionally stable life. The statistics and the rates that I got about CPS, I found off of theatlantic.com. And I also found a lot of my information off of CPS's website. And that website, I learned when you should call CPS. You should call anytime you see a situation where a child is being abused in your eyes. CPS does not take this lightly. They take every situation to heart. They take it very seriously from what I read on their website. And they're willing to help any child who's being abused. So with that being said, I hope that maybe I gave some insight to why I think that the policy should be changed for CPS, for the court systems, and for abused children. And I hope you enjoyed my speech. Thanks for watching.